Okay, good to go. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, welcome to everybody for the first meeting of the school year, first day of fall tomorrow, and we got to enjoy such a lovely spring fall day today. Well, actually still summer. It was lovely out there today, so I hope everybody got a little bit of sunshine. We have acknowledgement that I will do first. The Greater Victoria School District wishes to recognize and acknowledge the Esquimalt and Songhees Nation, on whose traditional territories we live, we learn, and we do our work. Before we approve the agenda, I've had a request right off the bat to move facilities up to a new C, facilities 1, 2, and 3, up to be the new C, and then every other number being bumped down 1. So with that, could we have approval to?
Can I add to the agenda as well?
Sure. What would you like?
I would like just to add an update on Cedar Hill and also just an update on the $1.9 million on the survey that's going out. So I don't know if you want trustee questions, or if those are the two topics I would just look for an update on.
So Cedar Hill, and that may fall under facilities quite naturally. Yeah. And the other one was the 1.9 million for what? Oh, for the
money that we just received to support parents with startup.
Okay, we'll put that under superintendent's report. How about that?
Thank you.
1.9 million. Okay, trustee Painter approved the amended agenda. Are there any other amendments to it? All those in favor of the agenda as amended, say aye. Okay, and that looks like it's unanimous. Thank you so much. Okay, approval of the minutes of June the 13th. Any issues there? Are you approving, trustee Duncan?
No, just have a minor amendment, Chair.
So I'll move the approval of the minutes.
Okay, trustee Duncan.
Yeah, so on page 10 under F1, just want to add some clarity. The second full paragraph under F1 on page 10, it says trustee Duncan asked if whether or not the aviation program at Mount Douglas Secondary School had received students, and whether the aviation shop remediations have been completed.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other discussion on the minutes? Okay, all those in favor of approval of the minutes? Okay, and that's unanimous. Any business arising from the minutes? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, we're going to go right to, sorry, trustee Duncan, I missed you. Thank you for flagging me. What would you like?
Yeah, so just a couple of items arising from F1 and F2 of the minutes that we just approved. I just wanted to follow up on, I suppose, F1 first, whether or not we had some clarity about whether the aviation shop remediations over at Mount Doug had been completed, and whether or not we've received students into that shop yet.
Okay, thank you. Secretary Treasurer, I'll get you to refer that to whomever might be able to answer that.
Sure. I'll refer that to Marnie Vistis in Harwood, and I'll just mention that it's her first day as our new Director of Facilities. So welcome, Marnie, and hopefully you can shed some light on Mount Doug Aviation Shop.
Yeah, thanks. The aviation shop has had the consultation now, so the drawings are approved, and they're actually, today was their very first day in the shop to start moving the equipment around. So that's inside the building. The actual hangar where they store their plane has had the full consultation. It's now clean and it's safe, so that portion's done. And as far as students being accepted into that, I would have to defer probably to Harold, I'm assuming.
Okay, Mr. Caldwell, do you have any further updates, or is it something you'll bring back to us?
I'll have to bring it back. Thank you.
Thank you. And further to that, did you have another one, trustee Duncan, or was that it?
The other one that's from the spring ops meeting was just around seeking some clarity about the actual number of increased seats at Vic High. We had some updates in the spring that suggested that we would be increasing seats by 175 rather than 200 seats. And so I was just seeking some clarity. I see later in the agenda that there is a couple of lines and later in the agenda, not sure which item it is, but I remember reading it in preparation. So I think we can maybe pick that up at that point in the agenda, if that's okay.
Sure, you can ask the questions then.
Yeah,
Okay,
thanks.
thank you. Any other business arising from the minutes? Okay, seeing none, we will go to our presentation to the committee. We have Chloe Fott and Amelita Kusher here today. Welcome. So we'll give you 5 minutes to do your presentation. And did you have anything that you need to share a screen with us for, or?
Yeah,
or
I'm ready to go though. Gonna hit
Okay.
share right now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, hopefully, I think it's up there now.
It is.
So thank you. Thank you, trustees and board members. I'm Chloe Fott. I'm a parent in the district and a secondary teacher in School District 63. And I'm the president of the Salish Sea Environmental Educators Provincial Specialist Association chapter.
And I'm Amelita Kusher. I've taught in SD61 for over 25 years and have been at Mount Douglas or Bacall Secondary for most of that time, where I am science department head. I teach senior biology, and I'm the advisor to our environmental leadership program.
And the Salish Sea EPSA chapter is a Provincial Specialist Association chapter. And we represent the districts 61, 62, and 63. We are passionate educators who care deeply about the earth and our students. And we do things like organize pro-D opportunities around environmental and outdoor topics. And we network and collaborate on various topics such as stewardship and climate action. We're here today to highlight the letter that we wrote to you on behalf of teachers and students, and which you should have a copy of. This letter is a product of discussions that we've had since 2019 when we became a chapter, and one that's timely now with your passing of a motion to reinstate green schools in June 2021. And we're in a climate emergency, and your board has passed a motion that says so. And waste practices are a very visible telltale to students about whether our district cares deeply about the earth and are working on climate action. And I feel so far we are letting our students down. I teach at Sides and other Saanich schools such as Stellies, and my students are anxious about climate change. It's just another part of the mental health challenges that are facing our kids today. And at Sides, I teach, one of the courses that I teach is earth science. And when I give students the option of a project to work on around the topic of water, they almost always choose a topic related to climate change because it's one that worries them.
At Mount Douglas, students are alarmed and overwhelmed by the climate crisis and the other environmental issues that have arisen lately. Many students take our Climate Change 12 course and engage in environmental leadership. They're looking for solutions. Students in our leadership program are frustrated with only being able to collect returnables like pop cans and not do anything more within the school to decrease our garbage production. Plastic use has boomed over the past few decades. I was part of the Green Schools initiative that gathered district staff and educators together over 10 years ago to come up with solution processes so that our schools would be totally garbage-free and everything would be recycled. The district provided us with tools such as collecting towers and bins. We had hard and soft plastic and compost pickups with students and staff responsible for sorting the recyclables and custodians gathering the compost. This seemed to work well in elementary and middle schools where students were primarily in one room. Students also packed their materials in and out. It was much more difficult in secondary schools, as recyclable materials such as yogurt and smoothie cups needed to be washed and sorted. There were major issues with contamination, which unfortunately were not communicated back to the schools. Many bags of sorted materials were thrown back into the garbage stream. There was significant burnout from staff and students trying to make this work, and mixed messages going to custodial staff. Eventually, the district stopped the costly pickups. So where do we go from here to make this work? This is a really big job. It needs tracking, communications, good solutions. Currently, litterless lunches work fairly well at elementary and middle schools, with it varying by school and the recycling champions who volunteer. Much of the recycling is downloaded to parents and certainly is not supported in our schools. As educators, we need to lead by example and provide opportunities, but we cannot do this alone.
We recognize that waste is a huge problem in our society, but we want to help with the development and coordination of a better system in our schools. We can offer Pro-D opportunities for teachers and work and coordinate with our network to implement steps and solutions. In our letter, we have suggestions on places we could start this conversation, and I encourage you to read through all our points. For instance, we suggest composting paper towels. We also think there should be better communication between teachers, PACs, custodial, and district staff. And we need to have a coordinator at the district level who communicates with schools, tracks progress, and coordinates solutions. We're going to keep working on this issue as an EPSA chapter, and our next step will be to apply for one of the CRD's Rethink Waste grants. And we look forward to speaking with you more about this. Thanks for your time. Thank you.
Thank you to you both for coming. And I know that before I open it for trustee questions, I know that this is being referred to the Climate Action Committee too for a more in-depth conversation coming up. I know that trustee Waters has mentioned that to me, that that's where it's going from here. But she had asked that it come to this committee first, just to bring it to everyone's attention, because the whole board is not at the Climate Action Committee. Does anyone have any questions for either Chloe or Emelita? Trustee Whitaker and then trustee Ferris.
Thank you. And thank you, ladies, ever so much for bringing this forward. As you know, we did pass a motion to do exactly as you said, is to create a working group. And then unfortunately that wasn't acted on, but has been moved to the Climate Action Committee. But I completely agree with you. That is our starting point, because we do know that we have made every effort. And it was kind of, we were on the cutting edge of doing this at the time, and we just didn't maybe have enough experience and other people doing it. And I think that we do know better now. And I think that we could do a much better job. And as you say, I think our students are asking for it. I really love your idea about the CRD grants. I know that the last round just went through, but absolutely, let's get in there. And I also think that there's, with the composting of paper towels and whatnot, I know that the CRD has created an additional charge now for pickup when your waste is not sorted. And I'm pretty confident that we are getting that surcharge on every one of our dumps. So there's, it's becoming that waste has changed, and it is becoming something that if we don't, as a system, start looking at reducing that, it's just going to continue to increase in costs. And I really think that what's happening around us in society, if we aren't teaching our kids to do this properly, that we're going to fail them, because they're going to end up at the mall and not know what to do, right? I see new people moving in from other provinces and they're completely bamboozled. We need to continue with this education. So I'm really excited about your Pro-D as well. So yeah, keep pushing us forward.
Thank you. Trustee Ferris.
Oh, thanks, Elaine. I just want to say that I listened to some young people on the radio today on CBC, and just talking about the general anxiety that's out there among young people, our students and young people everywhere. And I think really what they desperately want is something to latch on to that allows them to feel like they're making a contribution. And so I really appreciate what you're doing, and thank you so much.
Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you to you both for coming here tonight and sharing your expertise and some of the past practice, for offering to lend your support and your expertise and your knowledge. I think applying for a grant's a great idea. My hope is that in the next year, we start to see some of the commitments that we've made as a board result in some solutions. This is a really good example of a really, just a golden opportunity to show the kids that the adults that are leading the system, have a vision for how we might bring forward solutions, and hopefully give them some opportunities to take part and to feel like they have some agency when it comes to the world around them. So thanks so much for being here, and I look forward to hearing a little bit more. And I'm glad to hear that this is going to go to the Climate Committee, but I'm minded that a lot is being piled on to that committee because we're kind of behind the curve in terms of getting things done. So I hope that maybe as a board, we have a discussion about how to divide that work up so that we can keep the momentum going. It doesn't get bogged down on the to-do list for that committee alone. But thanks very much, ladies. Appreciate you coming tonight.
Trustee Painter.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to add my appreciation for your presentation and the work that I know you're doing. I wanted to just let you know, if you haven't already, I do work in the circular economy locally. And if you haven't looked into the Synergy Foundation Project Zero grants, it's a good idea to look there as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for Trustee Waters, sorry.
I just wanted to thank Chloe and Amelina for their leadership and just confirm that we will reach out from the Climate Action Committee and make sure that a representative from IPSA can come to the committee and help us deal with this pillar of the climate action plan as it moves forward this fall.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, we appreciate you coming tonight. You're more than welcome to leave the meeting. It might not be of interest what's coming up next, but you're also welcome to stay if you'd like. So thanks again for coming.
Thank you.
We're moving on to our new C, which is facilities 1, 2, and 3. So the first one is operations update, August 2022. I'm not sure who's taken that one.
Yes, I will turn that over to Director Vistis and Harwood.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, it's a bit of a long update since facilities was really busy over the summer. I'll start with the custodians. So they've essentially prepared all the schools for September startup. So they deep cleaned all the classrooms. They did the high dusting of the classrooms. They cleaned the windows. They scrubbed the furniture. They also had a group of custodians that actually cleaned a third of the upper outside windows, and then another group that actually cleaned the carpets. Network communication and security, they managed to install all the tech packs for the enrolling classrooms. They upgraded all of Campus View's tech packs. They also served another 200 tech packs, upgraded over 85 Apple TVs. On top of that, they completed full network upgrades at Lake Hill, Marigold, and a full PA upgrade at View Royal. So they've been busy. Maintenance and capital employees. So I don't know if you guys noticed, we painted the exterior of Spectrum. We finished painting the exterior of Campus View. Right now, we're just finishing the exterior at Lake Hill, and we started the exterior painting and prepping at Hillcrest. That was a little bit more of a project than we thought because the exterior had lead paint, so we had to deal with the remediation before we could prep it. So we will finish painting the exterior next summer when we get better weather, but we'll keep going until we get the rain. Rogers gym floor is now completely repaired after the water flood there. We are currently working on the site prep for the childcare for Lake Hill and Hillcrest, and we're waiting on the building permit for Mackenzie, which is quite a big deal because with the new changes that Saanich did on Margaret Street, they actually decreased staff parking on the street to 15 minutes only. So there's a lot less staff parking for Mackenzie. So we're trying to get the parking lot going so the teachers can park there. But we're waiting for the building permit. We've also completed all the bus charging commissions for our new electric buses. And we have 5 scheduled bus routes and 15 inclusive bus routes. 4 of the electric buses are now, all of them are now received. 2 of them are en routes, with all 4 to be en routes by the beginning of October. Woodshop update, their woodchops are now 95% complete. So we have completed all the dust collector interlocks. All the signage is installed. We've also got all the conflagration zones. All the equipment has been moved and into position, and the safety lines are painted. I say 95% complete because we're waiting on a couple pieces of equipment. For example, Shoreline had a really large horizontal belt sander. It was a little too big for the kids, so we moved it to a secondary school. So we're waiting for the vertical sander to show up. So we'll install that. Like I said, the metal shop consultations are complete, as is the air hanger, and we're starting to work on those locations next. Lastly, energy LED upgrades are still ongoing. Brian's going to be working on the energy audits at Lambert and Arbutus and looking at uncontrolled exhaust fans and thermostats to try and save the district some energy and money. And lastly, he'll start working on a lights out sticker campaign throughout the year to engage the students and staff. That is a long-winded update.
Thank you. We're always amazed every September how much our facilities department has gotten done over the summer and the last couple of months and all the upgrades. So as is usually the case for September, we would expect it to be a long list of things that have occurred, and that we hope that you can pass along our thanks to the staff for all their hard work, because we know that they've been very diligent in trying to get the schools back up to speed, along with things that come up as well as regular maintenance that comes up. Trustee Painter?
Thanks, Chair Leonard, and really do appreciate the report, Marnie. Echo Chair Leonard's sentiments. I was struck a bit by the Margaret Street parking piece at Mackenzie, the former neighborhood family of schools that I serve very fortunately. And what has happened there? I admit I haven't been around that school since Oak Bay has been my family, and of course COVID challenges and everything. And I always parked on that north side of the school along Margaret Street. And I don't really know of a whole lot more parking that's available for staff. So what's happened there? And are there any discussions happening with the municipality of Saanich to try to mitigate what's happened and the parking stuff? I mean, that is a bit of a concern.
Yeah, so Saanich kindly put a sidewalk down Margaret Street, and they made it parallel parking. So it's 15-minute max parallel parking, and that was done to ensure the safety of the students. So the parents can drop off, the kids can go on the sidewalk, and they can quickly enter the school property. So that's a good change. With that, I don't believe there's ever been adequate parking at Mackenzie Elementary. They've parked on Margaret Street, which is a bit of a problem since Saanich has now taken it away. Part of the building permit for the childcare noted the lack of parking for the school. So part of the permit for the childcare is actually to increase the parking for the staff as well. We're just waiting on the parking, or we're waiting on the building permit, sorry. So as soon as we get that, we already have the RFQ completed and the site prep ready to go and the paving ready to go. We just need that building permit from Saanich. So hopefully we'll get it any day now, any week now, and then we can start and pull that trigger and get the staff parking off the street.
Chair, quick follow-up if I may.
Yep, sure.
Marnie, can you just remind us where on this, I'm just looking at an overhead of the school. Can you remind us where at the site the childcare is going, and what the traffic flow is going to be like into that parking in and out onto that street, or wherever it's going? I just, for some reason, I can't remember. Sorry.
Yeah, and here goes my lack of geography. Okay, so the units themselves will go off of Margaret Street. The parking is going to go down by the entrance off Mackenzie. So as you pull in off of Mackenzie, right there's a current parking lot for the teachers, and we're going to expand that parking lot and then build a pathway up to the school. So that will be the parking, but the childcare itself is going up near the school by Margaret Street.
Is that the parking lot beside the playground?
Correct. Yeah,
okay.
Down the hill there, yeah.
Yeah.
That's clear. Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. Thank you, Marnie.
I just, as a quick add-on, I can't think of any other place in Saanich that has 15-minute parking.
Yes, and we've actually reached out to Saanich and asked them if they could kind of lessen the 15-minute parking until we get the parking lot. So far, the answer has been no. So we keep trying and asking that question. So I'm happy to give the names of the people we're dealing with. They keep saying no to anybody if they want to try for us as well. But so far, we get told no. That's their Saanich's policy right now.
Okay, like I say, they're singling out one area. It's not, doesn't seem to be consistent. Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thank you so much, Marnie, to you and the team for all the hard work over the summer. I had a couple of questions. First, very happy to see that we've got delivery of our electric buses. That's super exciting. I note that we have had a flurry of registrations for busing, and I also note that we're anticipating that some of those registrations might need to be delayed until October. I'm just wondering if you can give us a little bit of context in terms of how many students are affected by those later registrations and what the impacts are.
I will have to get back to you on that. I don't have the exact numbers or anything. No, so I'll get back to you next meeting.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. And then my other question, Chair, if I may, is just around, thanks. It's just around the custodial staff reduction. So I'm noting in the update that we're implementing the 50% reduction in custodial staff at elementary and middle school levels. We're identifying that there are some gaps in the process that need to be addressed. And I wondered if you could provide us just with a little bit of context, what kind of gaps we're seeing and what are some of the strategies we're using to mitigate those gaps.
Yeah, the few gaps that we noticed kind of right before school opening was the some of the childcare providers don't have day custodians to open the building. So we worked with those providers in order to give them fobs or keys or access, made sure their rooms, like the gym, for example, is open for them. So there's no problem there. So we've dealt with that. Some of the hiccups are if, unfortunately, if a student gets a nosebleed or other bodily fluids, just making a streamline to make sure that those are cleaned up in an orderly fashion. So there is a process in place for that. And then the other one is the cleaning of desks, making sure that everybody understands that the desks are not cleaned during the day. So we're working on that to give the ability to, if there's a student with a peanut allergy, somebody else is able to clean that desk with the appropriate materials.
Great, thank you.
And congrats, Marnie.
Nice
to see you.
Great, thank you. Seeing no other hands, we'll go to F2 or C, the new C2, Victoria High update, seismic project.
And I'll also invite Marnie Vistis and Harwood to present this report.
Okay, so the site is progressing quite well. The construction manager has updated his schedule, and they do so every month, and it fluctuates every month. But right now, the substantial completion and occupancy is now scheduled for August of 2023. The general theme are material delays and lack of skilled manpower being the big hurdles, which is out throughout the industry right now. Lots is happening on site. So the safety shoring in the interior of the building is now down, which is great. You've got the floor infill, the ceiling support grid, replastering of the interior walls, the heritage window replacement and the stained glass window repairs, exterior brick and terracotta repairs, modillion repairs, and the interior steel stud framing are all progressing really well. Drywall is actually going up in the west zone, and we're going to start installing our millwork in October, which is great. So some of the classrooms actually start looking like classrooms. And then in June, I think Trustee Duncan, asked a question about the capacity. So before all this work started, the school had a capacity of 800 students. When the work is completed, it will have a capacity of 1,000. This is due to the seismic addition, an addition of 1,100 square meters of new space, which provided 2 new stairwells and an elevator to improve circulation. It also allowed the architect the ability to redesign the school and allow for the relocation of non-classroom spaces with the addition of the multipurpose room, the learning commons, and the outdoor classroom. So we get the capacity of 1,000 students.
Did that answer your question, Trustee Duncan?
It did. I'll just assume, if I may, through the chair, that the 175 increased capacity quoted was just a typo in the previous reports.
Probably, yes.
And I'm just really glad to hear that we've got those 200 seats because I know we're going to need them. But yeah, thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions for Marnie? On the Vic High?
I just wonder, should I ask questions now about Cedar Hill?
Well, I was going to give you a break.
Perfect.
We'll finish
Yeah,
Vic High, then we'll move.
Because
We'll
it's
finish
not
Vic
really
High,
tomorrow.
then we'll go to Cedar Hill. Any other questions on Vic High? Trustee Duncan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just going back to budget, I know that we've had to go back and talk to the ministry about dipping into some of the contingency funding. I'm wondering what our latest ask is and whether we're confident at this point, given where we are with the project. I think we've got a little under a year to go until our projected completion date, whether we think this latest ask will be sufficient to kind of see us through, or if we see some other risks on the horizon in terms of unexpected inflationary pressures.
So the ministry did approve our below the line, the last little bit of the risk reserve for 2.6 million. So that is now approved completely. So we have allocated our full budget to the $79 million out. So it's all allocated out throughout the budget. And we have gone back with approval from the ministry for another risk reserve. And we have put in anything that we could possibly think of, worst case scenarios, to put into this risk reserve. So we will have enough money to complete the project.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so that's thank you very much for Vic High. So before we move on to the annual 5-year capital plan, Trustee Whitaker had a question about Cedar Hill. So we can just insert that here if that's okay.
Thank you. Actually, my question is, I see within your report, it says seismic hill, or that the design was sent to the ministry for review. I've obviously missed something, but my question is really, I guess, for the superintendent, because I did attend the Cedar Hill public input session. And I guess I was expecting to see that input brought forward to trustees to review and consider. And I'm wondering what's happening with that, especially when I see that the design within the report's already gone forward. So are we going to get that feedback, and will we be considering that information, or how is that going to work?
Secretary Treasurer?
Yes, so we are working with the architect to pull together their engagement report or their feedback, as well as the work that Lisa has been gathering. And so I believe that's coming to the board meeting on Monday.
Okay.
Okay, Trustee Whitaker, that's finishes with the questions that you had that were outstanding, correct?
Yeah, I'm sure I'm going to have more questions when I see the input.
No. But what I meant, there was one more we were going to put under the superintendent's report, but these were from Business Rising. Right. Okay. We're moving on to C3, revised minor capital. Secretary Treasurer, I think.
Yes, so the board approved its annual 5-year capital plan for the 23-24 school year in June. At that time, there were some questions about whether or not we could move from gas boilers or change the minor capital to a more green or environmentally friendly using heat pumps, etc. And so Marnie and team have worked over summer to modify the plan, which is attached to the pack up, in order to create a phased approach to some of those upgrades. And I can let Marnie just expand on the technical piece of that. But what we're looking for is, if we're to send in a revised minor capital request or modify our 5-year annual capital plan, we need the board to reapprove the minor capital as amended. And Marnie, I don't know if you want to expand on the technical piece of the phasing of the projects.
Yeah, sure. So the two biggest changes are Reynolds and Lambert. So it's a two-phased approach. So phase one would be the heat pumps as the primary heating source, and then there'd have to be a boiler backup. Whether it's natural gas or electric boiler would really depend on the actual facility and what type of what the building could sustain electrically. So we did phase one as the heat pumps, and then phase two as the backup boiler.
Okay, thank you. So we do have a motion on the floor which would reflect the changes that are here. Would anybody like to put the motion on the floor? Trustee Ferris, thank you very much. Any discussion on the motion? No? Oh, Trustee Duncan, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick point of clarification. So the goal would be in phase one to have electric heat pumps, but are we not positive yet that the buildings in question can sustain with the current electrical an electrical heat pump system? Is that the idea?
No, my apologies. No, phase one would be the electric heat pumps. So that's easy. It's the backup boiler that we could look at doing an electric backup boiler, but we're not sure if the current buildings could sustain it. So the backup to that would be natural gas. And it would only be really needed on the cold days of the year when the heat pumps aren't able to keep up with the load. So not all year.
Thank you so much. That helps.
Great, thank you. Any other questions on the motion on the floor? Trustee Whitaker?
So just maybe I'm showing my lack of tech on this one. So these heat pumps that you're putting in, will they also provide cooling?
Yeah, they can, yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Duncan?
Yeah, I just, before we vote, I just wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you so much to Marty and the team for going away and spending time over the summer during an already busy period for you folks to look at this again. I'm so grateful and so pleased, and thank you so much for your leadership.
Great. Thank you very much for all of your work on that. So if there's no other hands that I see, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion on the floor? And that is unanimous. So thank you very much. We are now moving on to our new D, Superintendent's report. And so we have seizure action plan, and then we have a request for any information on the 1.9 million received from the government for the recent money that we received in August. So I'll let the superintendent start with whichever one she'd like.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Leonard. I'll start with the seizure action plan. Just as a follow-up to ed policy last week, you have a memo, pages 21 and 22, that does outline where we're at right now with that plan. We've been in communication with the nursing services and are looking to the training that is required and ensuring that all parents of students who require seizure medication are aware of this moving forward. So that was there for your information. Happy to receive questions if you have any.
Any questions on the memo? Trustee Duncan?
No, not a question. It was really comprehensive, and I appreciate the superintendent coming back to us so quickly on this. I think it's an important health and safety item, especially given that we're starting up, and parents are certainly were left wondering. So really glad to hear that we're reaching out directly to parents with students who we know require this type of medication and may require a staff member to administer it during the school day. So thanks for bringing this back so quickly, Superintendent. Much appreciated, and really glad to see the coordination between different agencies to get this done so that everybody just breathes that sigh of relief to know that the kids will be looked after. So thanks.
Great, thank you.
Move into the Student and Family Affordability Fund. So as we know, there was an allocation of 1.953010 into this fund for the district. We have met with principals and vice principals who are meeting with PACs as well as staff committees and hearing their feedback on where they feel that the funds could be utilized. Again, it is to make life more affordable for families who are temporarily facing financial challenges and need that assistance with current cost of school supplies, education-related materials, or food insecurity. We've also shared this information with BC PAC. We had thought exchange and have met with the 4 houses again to look at individual needs. We've reviewed policy 6159, the hardship policy, and looked at how that works within our schools. And Secretary Treasurer Morris also has information on the reporting requirements we have and the spreadsheet that we will have in order to, again, appropriately report back to the ministry as we move through this allocation process. So I don't know if there are specific questions, or I also know this is a whole team endeavor. So Kim may have some. Yes, Kim has some, and Harold and Tom as well.
Can I just ask a quick question? Is there A timeline in which to have spent the money?
This school year.
Just in the year. Okay, thanks. Secretary Treasurer.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I believe this agenda item is also on a Four Houses agenda as well, to reach out directly to our Indigenous community. I think there's been a Google form that's gone out to principals and vice principals as well. And we launched a thought exchange that should close, I think, this week around where families or the public or students find there might be challenge as well. And the reporting is fairly comprehensive. And as Superintendent Whitten said, the idea here is to augment things that were already planned for the year. And so trying to benchmark where hardship spending is at each school, and then what can we augment in terms of food or supplies, et cetera, at each school. So it's quite a significant amount of data gathering and then theming and then meeting as a staff to develop a spending plan. So.
Great, thank you. Any other trustee? Oh, Trustee Whitaker.
Yeah, so my question for bringing this up, and thank you very much for all of the information and the work that's going into figuring out what to do with the money. I guess for me, the concern is that the idea to this money was to make life more affordable as soon as possible for parents. And when I go online on Facebook and other resources, all I'm hearing about is how people are not going to make it to Friday. They don't have enough money to get, the diapers or the milk. They can't get the gas to get to the next place. They're looking to borrow money. Now, I don't know if they're all legitimate or not, but they are all referencing that because school startup happened, that they are feeling the pinch. And I know that within the next week, we're going to be sending out the forms for school photos. And having been that parent in the past, that school photo form comes in at the very, very worst time. That's where I have to tell my children that, you know what? We're not getting photos because I've paid for everything else and I can't afford this. And that's a really horrible and terrible place to be. And I also know that parents often that are in that position don't step forward and ask for help, or they're not identified. Somebody else is in a far worse position than they are. They're going to be the martyr and they're going to suck it up and they're going to make it through. So what I want to know is for families that are struggling right now, they're not going to make it down to the end of the month. October 1st is looking really scary. How do they come forward and identify themselves as being in a position of immediate need and seeking and needing support? What would the process be for them?
Superintendent?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Well, first I would go to our policy around hardship, and I do recognize that with that policy, no student would be denied the opportunity to participate. I recognize that many families may not come forward, and so we are talking with principals, vice principals, staff committees, school-based teams, as well as PACs around those families that we don't hear from, but we may know because they aren't paying for a fee, but they're also not asking for support. So we're looking at, as Secretary Treasurer Morris said, we have money that we know within schools has been allocated in the past. This is on top of that. What is our estimation, both by social services index and what we know of the school? What's beyond that we may not be hearing from, and how do we get to those parents? So I think that we have tried to provide opportunities and avenues for parents to reach out, or for us to be able to pay fees when fees aren't paid for. So I think when we're not receiving those fees, we're not coming back to ask for them. Those will be paid and covered on top of what we traditionally paid for. So
how, I guess that then leads me to, if I may, the follow-up question. How are we letting our parents and our PACs know that, right? That, you know what, you don't have to come forward. You don't have to ask. You just don't have to pay, and nobody's going to bother you. It is about that communication piece. And I guess from my world and from the circles I'm walking in, I am not hearing that people are having a sense of relief because they know that there's going to be support at the district. Are we telling the One Up Single Parent Resource Center that, you know what, there is help for your families and this is how it's going to work? Like, are we talking to Bridges about families that are single parents that are there? And do you know what I mean? I think that there's a really great intention here. I do struggle with government putting us in this position. We are not social services. I think that there were other avenues to support parents, but here we are. So I'm just hoping and wanting to encourage us to really reach out that hand and tell people, especially because just being that parent, I'm telling you, October 1st is a really scary day for a lot of families out there.
Okay, I think staff have heard the feedback and will, if they have to adjust what they're doing, they will. I suspect that what they're doing will cover most of what your concerns are, Trustee Whitaker. Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. No, and I appreciate the conversation about this. I think it'll help not just trustees around the table tonight, but folks out there that are wondering how the money is, what the work that's going on to make decisions about how it's allocated. So I think it's a good, healthy conversation to be having. I just wondered if there was any sort of sense from the feedback we've received so far from PACs, how that communication piece to families that might not be stepping forward, it could take place. I'm wondering if we're getting any good feedback so far from PACs about how that could be facilitated.
Superintendent?
Yeah, so we have about half of the schools that have responded to the Google survey form. So we will be looking at that. And again, we have looked at the thought exchange as well. The thought exchange question wasn't on how best to share this information, but I do think through the communication from the principals to the PACs and the school-based teams, I think that helps get information out, as well as VC PAC. So I have been in communication with the president, Tracy Humphreys, around this affordability fund and how parents can access it. So I do think that there is information getting out there. I think we can always do more to communicate it, but I do feel as if it's coming through the schools, through the PACs, through VC PAC. And we also have provided some funding to the Welcome and Learning Center so that new parents and new families are able to access that.
Great.
No, it's great. I'm really happy to hear that. Yeah, I think all we can do to communicate that, just to take the burden off of families, especially folks that may not want to come forward, but are in need. Anything we can do to make that easier and be respectful and kind and respecting privacy. It's a difficult path to walk, but such an important one. So yeah, appreciate the work and thanks for the discussion around the table tonight.
Great, thank you. We'll be moving on to Finance and Legal Affairs, our new F. So F1, monthly financial report, Secretary Treasurer.
Sure, thank you. So on your pack-up, you'll find the monthly financial report. At August, we have about 89% of our revenue left to collect compared to 83% last year. And that's largely due to the posting of the surplus, which we haven't done yet. I will be doing that at the board meeting on Monday. Wages and benefits are about 97 and 94% at this point this year, remaining to spend. And they were 96, 93 last year for wages and benefits. And services and supplies have 83% left at this point in the year and 86% left last year. And overall in the expenditure side, both fiscal years have about 95% left to spend at this point in the year, of being August 31st.
Great, thank you. Trustee Duncan?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to the Secretary Treasurer for the report. I'm wondering if we can get the June and July reports. I'm particularly interested in the June report, as it's the last month of the financial year. Want to see where some of the balances ended up.
The June one is available. Well, they're both available, obviously. In June, we tend not to bring this particular report, but a presentation of the financial statements. I don't know if that suffices, but.
So at the board meeting next week will be the audited financial statement to the end of June?
Yeah, and the financial statement discussion and analysis report. So I don't know if it's possible to wait until then. And then if you still want this level of detail, you can let us know. Is
it possible just to have it emailed, just the last two? it's a lot easier. I find this format a lot easier. It's easier to pick things out than it is with the final audited accounts. So it doesn't need to be formal. Just by email would be great.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions on this report? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the budget change report, F2.
Okay. All of my attachments have disappeared somehow. That's okay. So under the monthly financial report, let me just get there, sorry. Yeah, so this is a report that we try to bring you once a month. And so at the top, we started with a preliminary budget that was approved and the surplus that was used to balance the budget of 2.3. When we move down into the changes section, this is the surplus appropriation that we are proposing the board approve next week. And there'll be more detail about what some of those items entail. And then the other changes down below after the 224 million changes dash amended budget are some of the comings and goings that we've seen so far this year. So we know when we set the preliminary budget, it changes right away. And so I just want to point out one thing in terms of the enrollment adjustment in miscellaneous revenue. So we'll recall at the approval of the preliminary budget, the board took some risk in terms of a profit margin and enrollment coming in higher than projected in order to balance the budget. And so while we're still anticipating that and our 1701 is yet to come in, just as a bookkeeping measure, we've taken this enrollment out. And when the 1701 enrollment comes in, the revenue will be adjusted again. Just so that when we bring in the correct enrollment, we won't have to net it out against this 324. It's been taken out. If we move on to the special purpose, we can see the kinds of revenues that have come in since the preliminary budget was passed. One of the new funds for $175,000 is the early learning and childcare capacity funding. And from this funding, we have appointed a early learning district principal. And so some of the purposes of this funding are to lead and support early learning childcare school district projects and initiatives, complete and or support the completion of an environmental scan on childcare, identify and align district resources to support early learning childcare, coordinate existing or new initiatives alongside early learning staff or team, maintain a focus on high quality early learning and childcare experiences, engage across district and liaise with partners and ministry staff, and identified opportunities for and expand access to childcare on school grounds. And so when you think about some of the early learning presentations you've seen from Charmaine Short, this is the type of early learning initiative that we're trying to address and to make sure that our childcares are responsive to the new policy. And beyond the district principal, there's an unallocated amount there that we are meeting about in the upcoming weeks. The Student and Family Affordability Fund we've already spoken about. So the ministry grant is 1.9 million and it's unallocated at this time. And the other grant that was recently announced was the 48,000 mental health early action initiative. And again, working on a spending plan for that. And that's unallocated at the moment. And then if we move to the last page of this report under local capital, we'll see that at SJ Burnside, our partnership with Pacifica Housing and the quick claim on a portion of the SJ Burnside property has closed and we have received those proceeds.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions for this report? Okay, thank you very much. We will move on to F3, new policy 8110, role of the board, and this was referred from the June 13 ops meeting. So trustees will have seen it back before the summer break, and we ran out of time that meeting, so it was referred to this one. So it's the first time the board will be going through this document in its entirety. So we'll take it slow and we'll ask for any amendments from the floor, and I'll go through it as slow as I can for you, and be patient and wave your hand wildly if I miss you for anything. We're going to go through the rationale. Is there any amendments to section 1.1 or 1.2 in the rationale? Okay, nothing there. Under definitions, there's nothing there, so we'll move on for definitions. Policy 3.0, 3.1, and then it's got subsection 1 and 2, and 3.2. Before we turn the page, is there anything on 3.1 that anybody wants to amend? No? Okay. 3.2.
Yeah, I do for sure.
Trustee Whitaker.
So I guess, can I just start with right off the bat, develop and maintain a culture of student learning? I just wasn't sure if that was the right, anyway, whatever. I just thought it was.
If you have better wording.
I just thought it was interesting. I would have just got to develop and maintain student learning, but because I don't really know what a culture of student learning is, but whatever, it's fine. So if you go to 4, I would like to see, instead of ensure resources for approved initiatives, but to provide. I think where we start talking about the resources and funding and we're ensuring, we don't get to decide how much money government's giving us. So I just found that ensure was a little bit strong for that. So if that could be provide resources.
Okay. So anything else under 1, 2, 3, and 4 in that section?
Well, just circle 3, and I think we're going to get back to my thoughts on that later as it comes further in the document. So I won't do anything with that now, but.
So we won't do anything with 3 now. Okay.
No.
Anyone else have anything under 1, 2, 3, or 4 in that section? Okay, we're moving on to 3.3, accountability 2, and engagement of community. It's 1 through 5. Any questions, concerns, word changes? Trustee Whitaker.
Okay, so in this one, I did have a question number 1 under 3. What are the report district outcomes? When we say outcomes, what are we talking about? If I were to go and look online or to go somewhere, is there something that are the measurable outcomes other than the strategic plan that we're trying to achieve?
Superintendent?
I think when we were talking about student learning outcomes, then that is with regards to how are we doing, or the both with Indigenous students as well as students with a ministry designation. We do have regular reports that come from the ministry around that, which would also include the FESL. So
yeah. So, I mean, I'm fine with it. I just, when, if I were the lay person and I was looking at report district outcomes, I just thought it was kind of a bit vague as to what that would be. So that was my comment. But I would
sorry, before we go ahead, if I may, I just believe I saw the Secretary Treasurer put her hand up in response to the last one. So I just don't want to miss the Secretary Treasurer.
Secretary Treasurer.
Superintendent covered off what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. I missed that. Okay, Anne, did you have a carry on about that?
Okay, so thank you. So then I'm going to do the same thing I did in the last one. Under number 2, establish process and provide opportunities for community engagement. In this case, I want to ensure. Can we strike provide and make that ensure? Because I do think this is in our power and we can ensure that, and we absolutely should be.
So I'll just refer back to the Secretary Treasurer or the Superintendent. If we put the word ensure in there, is there any instance where ensure would not work that you can conceive of?
Yeah, I think the same rationale could be used as with resources. I think when we use ensure, will it fulfill everybody's expectation of engagement, or do we use the word provide for consistency and expectation management? We know that engagement also comes with a price tag, so. Just a thought.
Yeah.
there.
So
So-
maybe if I were to
so-
finish the amendment, because then I would, after engagement, I would just add prior to decision making. And that's where I think ensure then does make more sense. So it would actually read establish process and ensure opportunities for community engagement prior to decision making.
Say that again, please.
Establish processes and ensure opportunities for community engagement prior to decision making. And that's why I chose the ensure, because before we make decisions on if we have to consult.
So I'll go back to Secretary Treasurer or Superintendent to see if that wording meets with the objectives that we have within the district and is doable.
For me, I guess I would, maybe let the minutes reflect, as long as we're managing expectations in terms of somebody who didn't feel they were engaged, doesn't say that we weren't meeting the needs of our policy. We know that when we are engaging with the public, we bring the engagement plan to the board to vet. And so I guess I would just want to give the board some cushion or some comfort that if we weren't meeting exactly every person's needs in terms of engagement, that doesn't mean we're not meeting the needs of or meeting our obligations under the policy.
You understand that, Trustee Whitaker?
I totally understand that, and I absolutely expect that. I don't believe that we will ever please everybody all of the time, and if we are, we're definitely doing something wrong. So yeah, I'm totally good with that. I just think that, you know, as long as we say that, you know, before we make this decision, there's this opportunity that ensures, you know, if they come to a board meeting, as long as we're doing that, they can do that. They can come to a committee meeting. It's just about, you know, putting in writing that, you know, we do want the public, I mean, because the title is Accountability and Engagement of Community. That includes that we're going to make sure that they had a chance to speak, right?
Well, ensuring opportunities for community engagement doesn't mean it's 25 different kinds of community engagement.
Absolutely.
It's whatever we deem appropriate.
Agreed.
Trustee Ferris, did you have your hand up?
Thank you. To me, processes implies, coming decisions. I mean, you have processes because you've got decisions coming. And to me, provide is stronger than what we're proposing to change. So just my thoughts anyway. I mean, I think it's good to talk about it, but I don't think we're improving what we have already.
So we'll be coming back to vote on all of these after. We're just making the changes as we go through. Trustee Painter.
Thanks. I'm just curious. I don't know if it's overkill. I don't necessarily think that changing provide to ensure changes this that dramatically, but I'm wondering if we want to then add on to the end of Trustee Whitaker's addition, just a simple phrase, consistent with board policy, just to make sure that it's very clear and straightforward that we're establishing these processes, ensuring opportunities for engagement consistent with our policies that already exist. And if we want to name them and number them, so then we have an opportunity for people to go to those so that they know what we're reflecting. It's an opportunity for education on this. So people know where to go. Just a thought as we ruminate on this.
Okay, but you haven't added your thought in writing yet? It's just a thought out there?
It is just a thought. If someone wants to capture it, they can capture it. If not, it can go where it needs to go.
Okay, anything else under 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 into that section? Okay, we're moving on to 3.4 strategic planning, 1 through 4. Strategic planning, Trustee Whitaker.
Thank you. So under 3 I's, annually ensure evaluation of the effectiveness of the district in achieving established priorities and key results. That's lovely. And yes, we should look at that, but it's actually the superintendent that we hold accountable to those results. So this should be annually ensure evaluation of the effectiveness of the superintendent in achieving established priorities and key results. That's our job. We don't decide if the district is, we decide, I mean, it is the district, but it is about the superintendent. And that's coming straight from Charles Ungulator, that's That's what we do. We are evaluating the superintendent and their ability, because we just set direction for the superintendent and their ability to do those tasks. So I would strike the word district and insert superintendent, because that's actually who we evaluate. We don't evaluate the district, other than we review the data and we say superintendent. The data says something that we don't want it to say. So what are we going to do to fix it?
I disagree with you, but I'll see if the superintendent has any feeling on that. But I'll just jump in. I think that we're evaluating, and when we say the effectiveness of the district, for all intents and purposes, where it is spelled out in other documents, the superintendent is the one that's doing that. So I don't think it has to be written here that is what is happening, but I don't think it has to be written here. So maybe the superintendent has something to add there.
Yeah, I think it, to me anyways, as the superintendent, I do think it has the potential of changing what the purpose of this statement is. I also, in the superintendent's evaluation policy, it isn't speaking about an annual evaluation. So I think we have to be with language that's in both policies that it aligns, but I feel like that statement changes the purpose of that.
Yeah, there's other ways of ensuring the evaluation of the district, and that is usually provided by the superintendent. Trustee Painter.
Yeah, I'm just very quick. I agree. I actually think as is perfect. We talk about the evaluation elsewhere in this document, so I think it's redundant to put it here.
Okay, anything else, Trustee Whitaker, in this section?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, page 31, the board shall, and there's 6 sections there, so that must be 3.5. Anything under 1 through 6 in this section? Trustee Duncan?
Yeah, so at 3.5.2, it says delegate the authority to the superintendent and define commensurate accountabilities. I think we want to be clear, delegate what authorities, delegate appropriate authority to what? To enforce a board policy. I think we need to be a little bit more clear about what we're delegating. And in general, in the document, I know that the board likes to keep things very high level, but when we're defining board responsibilities, or for that matter, the superintendent's responsibilities, and how the board and the superintendent interact to ensure that those each body's responsibilities are carried out, I think we want to be very, very specific. And so, yeah, I think we need to define what authority it is that we're saying we need to be delegating to the superintendent. In this context, I'm assuming it's the authority to enforce board policy. Is that right?
So are you adding, so that you're in board policy? So delegate the authority to enforce board policy to the superintendent and define commensurate accountabilities? Is that what you're adding?
Well, that's what I would suggest if my assumption about what was trying to be achieved here is correct.
Okay, secretary, treasurer, or superintendent. Do you remember or recall if that was what the intent of this was? I think it was, but.
I think it is, but it's more than upholding board policy. I think through its policies, the board does delegate authority, but the superintendent has inherent authority under its role, under the School Act, etc. So I don't know if it needs further fleshing out, or if we're fine to leave it high level. I think there are several areas of authority that the superintendent is provided in our organizations and in the province.
Trustee Whitaker?
So yeah, I guess for me, I also had circled this commensurate accountabilities, and didn't clearly state to me what we were talking about. So for me, I'm looking of like, we're going to set the goals and get that strategic plan done. Like so maybe we just need to define what these commensurate accountabilities are. They are not apparent to a lay person what we mean there. So maybe we can just firm that up.
Okay. Trustee Duncan?
Yeah, so just speaking to the chair, to the Secretary Treasurer's comments, you know, when I read this, it's a section about policy. So I assume that we're going to be, you know, speaking to policy rather than, you know, any power that the or responsibility that this superintendent may have under the School Act. In general, in this document, I think there's a few different areas where if it becomes a little bit too high level for my liking, I think there tends to be this slippage in my view, and it's just one view around the table, but we tend to forget how difficult the responsibilities and delegating the responsibilities, and then as a board overseeing, you know, from a performance perspective, superintendents who have this really amazingly wide and all-encompassing brief that they're responsible for on behalf of the boards that hire them. So, you know, I guess what I'm looking for is a document that I feel captures that nuance a little bit more clearly. I'm afraid I don't tonight have a suggestion for how to achieve that, but to me, this is heavy on, you know, we delegate the authority, but there isn't a lot about how the board then, you know, ensures that there's some accountability for that, you know, how that delegated power is wielded, for lack of a better word.
Well, I think it is, because we delegate it to the superintendent and then the board defines the commensurate accountabilities. So that to me encompasses everything else that the superintendent is doing, because we're having the conversation about the accountabilities that follow through with that. I want everybody to remember that this is the first time we've had the role of the board. It doesn't mean that it's going to stay this way forever, but I think it is important that at some point in time we get something on the books, because we haven't had one. And I don't expect it to be perfect the first time, but I think we need to get as close to perfect as we can. So I agree with everybody's input here. I haven't heard of wording in number 2 that seems to encompass what everybody's wanting this to do. So is there, Trustee Duncan, you didn't have any wording to suggest. I think we heard that possibly to enforce board policy was too narrow. So is there anybody else that would like to take a kick at this one, or should we move on? Trustee Painter.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Or we can bring this one back with possible wording if people like. If we can't, if we want to take a look at it and see if we can bring anything back. So I'll put a question mark beside that one. Anything else under 1 through 6 on this section? Trustee Whitaker.
Okay, so in number 3, it says identify the purpose and the criteria for any new policies. I think that the board can do more than that, and I worry about us narrowing the abilities of the board. I think that we can propose new policies. We can do lots of other things around that. And I thought that this was to identify the purpose, and the criteria seemed just a little bit small. And I want, especially a new board, to know, you know what? You're allowed to follow the bylaws that we have about proposing a policy and making those changes and going through that. We're only one step in that. So that was my thought on there, that should maybe just be expanded as to what more a board can do with a policy. And then in 4,
can I just ask a question? Can I ask a question about 3?
You certainly can.
If you're saying the board can or shall identify the purpose, is that not creating? If they are the ones identifying a purpose or identifying a policy that's needed, that's, to me, that says what you just said. Because if you're identifying it, you're coming up with what a policy could be, or that is not there.
I guess, Elaine, sorry, Trustee Leonard, what I'm speaking to is that in the past, we've had challenges with getting policies to come forward or being allowed to do this. So I just want it to be very clear that trustees are allowed to come forward with a new idea and to create something. And then the board gets to decide if they want to keep it. But where you say identify the purpose here, to me, it feels like there's the opportunity that if that a trustee individual would be doing that. Whatever. I mean, I'm just putting out my ideas and my critique on this. I also think
wording.
Pardon me?
Do you have suggested wording for that one?
Yeah, I wanted to put in the word propose, that they're allowed to propose. They're also allowed to come up with the idea, not just to identify the purpose.
Identify the purpose and criteria or propose.
They can propose or identify the purpose of any and the criteria for any new policy.
Okay, that's where you wanted it to go. Okay, thank you.
Right at the beginning.
Thank you. Number 4. I don't disagree with you.
Make the final decision as to the approval of all policy statements. That's true, but again, that's not the only thing that we do on that. And again, I'm concerned that the board is allowed to be involved in the creation and the discussions leading up to, as well as the final decision to approve policy statements, because I think it's really important that the board is involved through the creation of that policy before they just approve at the final end. So for me, I'm looking for they are allowed to create and make the final decision as to the approval of the policies. I mean, maybe I'm overdoing it because it's been a rough year, but where we've never had this before, I don't want this policy to come down and then be something that can block individual trustees from doing things. So for me, I want them to know that they can also create as well as make the final decision. They should be involved in the whole process.
So if I can just, we'd have to change this. So if I can just, we'd have to change this policy has gone through the policy committee and it is in compliance with our other policies, one of which is the ad hoc policy committee. So that would say that they start the process, but it comes from the board to start that process. And then it comes back to a committee and then it comes to board. So the way our policies are written, there is ample opportunity to have that discussion. And trustees start the process, then it goes to a committee, then it comes back to a committee, then it goes to the board. So I'm just looking at this from my perspective, if you wanted to change that sentence, you would have to change other policies that support what's in front of you. I'm not saying it's not impossible. I'm just saying this is flowing because we have the other policies in place in the bylaws. We'll come back to you. Trustee Duncan?
I'm happy to change those two.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind us, that there is a bylaw on the development of policy, and that sets out the process of developing policy. So I don't know, frankly, how much the role of the board needs to go into that. I think really what it could be just saying is that the policy development process you can find out more about that in bylaw, 9210 or 9220, whichever it is. And I think what we want to be making clear in this document is that the policy, all policies, regardless of who initiates it, how it ends up on the board table, whether it's a trustee, whether it's a member of staff or a student for that matter, that the board is the body that will approve all policy. So to me, if we're doing that and we're pointing folks to the existing bylaws and the process for developing policy, that would take or it would take some of this sort of tension, I think, out of the document.
I think we could easily
add that policy in there then, the bylaw.
The bylaw policy could be added under references quite easily. Trustee Ferris?
Sure, I sympathize with a lot of what Trustee Whitaker is saying, but I think maybe we're confusing a bit. This policy is the role of the board. It's not the role of individual trustees on the board. And so, yeah, I think that we adequately cover what the board needs to do with what we have. Thank you.
Okay, we're still on 1 through 6 in this section 3.5. Any other questions or comments before we move on? Okay. We're moving on to 3.6, Board Superintendent Relations, 1 through 6. Any questions, concerns? Trustee Duncan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My suggestion is just to add, let's see, under 5. No, sorry, it's become 4, I think. So it starts with respect the authority of the superintendent to carry out executive action and support the superintendent's actions which are exercised within the delegated discretionary powers of the position. And then I suggest that we add something like, and communicate any board direction regarding required changes or improvements. Because I think what we need to do is just make it clear that, you know, in supporting, you know, the actions that the superintendent takes in their role and within their authority as delegated by the board, set out in the School Act, that the board has also an obligation to communicate any direction about required changes or improvements.
Required changes or improvements on about what?
About the superintendent's exercising of their responsibilities. I think that's what I think for me in this document, and we've had this conversation around the board table quite a lot on and off, but maybe a little less directly than we are tonight. But so the idea that a board delegates authority and then doesn't give any direction about improvements or changes that need to be made, to me is very problematic. So I think, you know, in this document, while we're talking about the authority that a board delegates to a superintendent, and we're talking about the responsibilities that a superintendent has under the School Act, we also need to acknowledge and recognize the responsibility that a board has to communicate areas requiring improvement or change.
Would that not happen under the evaluation number 4?
No, not necessarily. And I think that's part of what's problematic for me anyways. And I think something that the board needs to kind of work on is that the idea that the only time a board is going to communicate areas that require change or improvement is through the evaluation process is just, in my view, not realistic. The evaluation process is a performance management tool.
Yes.
But when you're working with your staff, especially your executive staff as a board, there are going to be moments where you're, you know, in that working relationship where the board has to, outside of a performance evaluation, communicate areas that need to be changed or improved. So I just think it's important that we acknowledge that that is part of the board's role. It's not just it's not just left for once every year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years in an evaluation process. It's part of that working relationship you have with your, you know, with your superintendent.
Hey, I saw the Secretary Treasurer's hand up a while ago. Sorry. Did we lose your train of thought? Or did we cover it?
Well, I'll just hold my comment for now. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so give me your wording again, because I don't have it all down.
Sorry, let me just go back to my note. So after powers of the position, it would read, and communicate any board direction, including any required changes and improvements.
Okay. Required changes or improvements. Okay. Anything else from anybody under 1 through 6? Trustee Whitaker?
Yeah, so on 4, I think we should strike after with a pre-established performance appraisal mechanism. So just strike that piece so that it would then read evaluate the superintendents in accordance with policy 2100.1 superintendent evaluation.
Okay, with policy. Okay, anything else under 1 through 6? Okay, we're moving on to 3.7, political advocacy and influence. 1, 2, or 3? Anything there for anybody?
I had just put a question mark under number 3. When you say that, what exactly are you saying?
Well, what would you interpret that?
Well,
could
that's
answer
why
that as-
I asked the question, because it's very broad, and that's where I guess I was just concerned. I like that it says advocate for public education. I'm just not sure about and the district.
Superintendent? Sorry, Secretary Treasurer.
I think that this would center around things like funding, other advocacy measures that the board might take to promote or to protect or to further fund or enhance the district itself, whether it be funding or education policy at a provincial level, et cetera, or municipal partners, et cetera.
I'm just going to think on it over the next week, because I feel like it just sort of ends, and because of that, it could, I don't know. I just want to think on that one a bit more. So maybe just circle that. I'm just concerned that advocacy for the district, it could go a little bit crazy, or it could be too little. I don't know.
Okay. Anybody else on 1, 2, and 3? Okay, we're on 3.8, board development. There's a number 1 and 2. Trustee Whitaker?
I would make the same change to number 2 that we did on number 4, 3.6. So is to strike the pre-established performance mechanism and just put the policy in, which is 2100 superintendent.
Okay.
Oh, no, wait, that's not the right one. Sorry. Do we have that policy? Sorry, this one is for the board.
No, we don't have that yet. That's why we've left it blank.
Oh, I hate when we try and write these things without the policy in it.
I know. There's only so much we can give the board at one time. There's only so many bites in a.
Okay, so I don't want to amend
in
any
a
of it
sandwich.
then. Sorry.
Okay. Anybody else for number 1 or 2? Okay, we're moving on to 3.9, fiscal accountability. We have numbers 1 through 12. I hate Roman numerals. Trustee Whitaker.
So in the first one, I would strike at the onset of and just say prior to, because I think the sooner we can do that. Anyway, I like it just a little broader there.
Well, we have a budget process which it goes all year now. So basically it starts in September. So we're not talking about the budget process in April. So
that's why I kind of went to the prior to, because at the outset, when is that? Right? Like, do we really, is the outset at the end of June before we've actually set a process, a full process, or?
Secretary Treasurer, maybe the Secretary Treasurer can tell us when she thinks the process begins for each year.
The outset would be before, so for example, for 23-24, we're going to bring a budget process to the board in the September board meeting, and that would be the outset of the 23-24 budget, because we're not planning to meet until November. So prior to the first meeting of any group to discuss budget for the upcoming year.
Does that give you any cause for pause?
They're half a dozen of one, 6 of the other. I just want to make sure that we have the ability to set that very broadly. Just know that budget is, of course, something, and the budget process is something that the public cares a lot about.
Yep.
And I just wanted to make sure that we have an understanding of what outset and the prior, and that we're not getting held to, well, you already did stuff before. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. No, correct. Okay, so we've put that as a question mark. Anything else 1 through 12?
And then in number 2, identify budget assumptions. What are we saying when we say that?
Secretary Treasurer?
We set out assumptions all throughout the budget advisory committee meetings last year. So when we were presenting projected surpluses or deficits, we were stating our assumptions that enrollments were only projections, that surplus projections or reserves were based on trending. The assumption was that the reserve would be built up over time. We try to state our assumptions to be transparent, and then if they change or the numbers change, we've stated our assumptions such that it's being transparent to the public. And then if the numbers change, we change our assumptions based on updated data or trending or analysis. So
It is
we always state, we build every budget with assumptions because there's so many unknowns. And so it's to state them for transparency.
It is a term we've been using for the last decades of years, so.
Right. So just hearing that, should it be in collaboration with the superintendent and the secretary treasurer? Because I'm not sure. That was my thought on there. That's why I thought budget assumptions. I just needed to clarify that because I think, anyway, you guys can do whatever you want with that thought. I think that's something that is solely a lot more of the responsibility of the secretary treasurer or the skill set. So I just wondered if that needed to be in there. And that's why I was trying to understand exactly what we meant with the assumptions.
Okay.
So you can discuss, do whatever you want with that.
Anything else in 3 through 12?
No, I guess I would just say under 9 is that the ones that it says through receipt of quarterly variances analysis and year-end projections. Is that what we're just using right now, or is that a legislated thing?
Secretary Treasurer?
Pieces that we're looking at.
So quarterly reports, I don't think they're legislated, and the projections aren't legislated either. That's just something we do through our audit committee and throughout our budget process. So,
okay.
We did add the audit committee at the request of our auditors to say that that was another level of accountability and transparency
I'm good
that
with
we
it
needed.
being there. My thought was just I wanted to make sure where we're writing a policy, is that the only one? Should there be more? Do we want to make it broader so that we are looking at all reports, or did we want to specifically state just these reports? Was the reason for bringing that one up.
So I'll ask the Secretary Treasurer, we now do your monthly budget updates too. So I guess the question would be, do you want to have more in there than the quarterly?
Or do you want, or should it be less that says various reports, right?
yeah, I think we have a well-established mechanism through the audit committee to provide that quarterly report with variances, including the year-end financial statements, obviously, and that our year-end projections are done through budget. So I think it's fine to leave the way it is. It does, we could say through the audit committee or other mechanism, but and throughout the year-end projections throughout the budget process, if that gives anybody comfort, but I don't mind just leaving them as they are. It doesn't mean we can do
More.
we can't do more, but I think that's variances are fairly, I provide you with a very simple variance monthly, but the quarterly variance is definitely a bit more in depth. So I wouldn't want to do that any more often.
No.
Okay.
Okay, anything more from 1 through 12? Okay, moving on to the next section, 3.10, additional responsibilities. Anybody have any concerns? Trustee Duncan and then Whitaker?
Yeah, I just wanted to find out whether this was intended to be an exhaustive list, and if so, the board approves a code of conducts and is also supposed to be approving school plans. And I think, hopefully I think that our policy should acknowledge that, even if our practice hasn't quite got there yet. So wondering if this is meant to be an exhaustive list, and if so, if we can add those to it.
Superintendent? I don't believe we approve the codes of conduct for schools.
No.
I can't remember what the second one was, but
School plans. What I'll do before the board meeting, Chair, is just bring the relevant order and section of the School Act.
Okay.
To clarify that for folks.
Yep, perfect. And then if you can send it ahead of time, so maybe we can have the information prior to the meeting. That would be great. Okay, anybody else under additional responsibilities? Trustee Whitaker?
Thanks. I actually had it written down as well, why I put down why this list, and, you know, hearing Trustee Duncan, her concern seems to be about whether this is exhaustive. For me, I wondered why we were writing this whole list of things other than saying something along with other duties and responsibilities rather than creating a list like this. I mean, maybe it's a good piece for trustee training, but I just don't think that we're ever going to create a list of all of those things that we do. And I worry that if we start making a list like this, if it's not on there, we don't think about it. We don't think it's our task. So I guess maybe I'm looking for a broader statement that says, well, you know, on your job description, it would be as other duties as asked by your supervisor or something. You know, I'm looking for just that statement that says that there's other duties that we would do beyond this, but sounds like Trustee Duncan's got.
So we're
another
looking for a
list
number,
coming, so I
we're
don't
looking
know.
for a number 13 that's all encompassing. That's,
Yeah.
and any other things that come up. So we'll try and
Yeah.
create one of those, any other. We'll try and create an all encompassing list, because I think it is important that when somebody's reading the role of the board, especially a new trustee, they have some idea of the things that will be asked of them, and any other would encompass things that came up that, you're right, aren't on this list. Anybody else under 1 through 12 there? Okay, responsibilities of the board, that's fairly straightforward. And under references, we've added the policy bylaw to that section.
What?
Okay, so we're going to go back to the top now, and we're going to quickly vote on some of the
Pardon me,
changes.
Chair.
Pardon?
Sorry, Chair, just before you do that, I just had a comment about the very end. So sorry, just bear with me, I have to go back down to my notes. So just wanting to add in the last section, we talk about at 4 responsibilities, we talk about the School Act, we talk about policies of the board, but we don't talk about bylaws and regulations of the board, and I think we need to include those. So if it could say the School Act, and then in the order of priority, board and bylaws, policies, and regulations of the board. And just so that, just for completeness, so 8.3 of the School Act is what references boards approving school plans, but I can also email that.
Okay, that'd be awesome. So under references, you're adding board bylaw and policies.
And regulations. Isn't that what you said?
That's right, yeah, so it'd be board bylaws, policies is already there, and then also after policies, regulations.
Okay. So we're going back to the first part. So we're trying to have a document that is somewhat complete before the end of the evening. So on page 1 under rationale, I heard no changes. So that stands, correct? No, okay. Under definitions 2, there's no changes. Under 3, the only change I had was 30 was under number 4, the word ensure is being changed to provide. Is that correct? Okay, if there's any issues with that, otherwise we will go with that. That seemed reasonable. Okay, so we're going with the word provide. Under 3.3, here's where we get into a discussion. Under 2 was the only changes in here, was Trustee Whitaker had proposed establish processes and ensure opportunities for community engagement prior to decision making. That was the suggested wording. So I would like a quick discussion on who wants the original wording and who wants the new wording. Let's see, any comments, questions, concerns? Trustee Ferris.
I'm happy with the original wording.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? So we will have a vote. Because they see the difference of opinion there. All those in favor of the wording, the original wording, signify with their hands. 2, 3, 4. Ryan Painter. I'm missing you.
Well, it doesn't
Okay.
matter. You've already got your majority. So
Okay. Are those
we're
opposed?
gonna play.
We had. Anne, are you opposed?
What?
To
Yeah, I
the-
would like my wording, thanks.
Okay, so that passes then. We're staying with the original wording. Okay, we're in section 3.4. We're under number 3. The discussion was to talk about the superintendent instead of the district in number 3. So comments, questions, concerns around changing the word, the effectiveness of the superintendent in establishing priorities and key results, or keeping it as the district. Trustee Ferris and then Whitaker.
I think if we change it to superintendent, then we're sort of in the realm of evaluating the superintendent, and I don't really see the point of that. So I would like to leave it the way it is. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Whitaker and then Trustee Painter.
I'm fine with leaving it as it is, but I want to jump to 4.0 under responsibilities. And I think that's where it needs to be, that it is also the responsibility of the board to evaluate the effectiveness of the superintendent in achieving established priorities and key results. I mean, that is our job. That's what we're supposed to do. So if it's not there, then I want it under the other responsibilities, which I think is actually where it should go.
Okay, when we get there, you can do that. So we're back to the original wording then. And I don't see any other hands, so we're going with the original wording. We are now on 3.5 policy. Oh, sorry, Trustee Painter, I did see your hand up. Oh, we're okay? 3.5 policy. It's in discussion of number 2. Trustee Duncan, I believe it was, said the delegate the authority to enforce board policy to the superintendent and define commensurate accountabilities. That could have been Trustee Whitaker, I'm not quite sure. So it's a question of original wording, or do we want to discuss the wording changes or what has been proposed? So what do trustees have to say here? Trustee Duncan?
Yeah, I mean, I prefer my wording because I think that when the section's about policy, then it should be about policy. And so what we're doing, if it is about policy, is we're delegating responsibility to the superintendent to ensure that board policies are enforced. So I just think it clarifies the section and the intention, but I'm happy to discuss if there was a different intention and I've just missed it.
Secretary, Treasurer, or Superintendent, can you provide shed any light on the sentence as to if your understanding is different than Trustee Duncan's?
No, I don't think it's different. I'm just looking at the School Act under section 22(1), which is just speaking to the role of the superintendent. So I don't know if we say in respect or in relation to the School Act, but I don't have a concern with Trustee Duncan's wording.
So do you mean at the end of it, you leave it the same and then within the School Act, or however you just said that, related to the School Act, if that's what you're saying, is to add it at the end of the sentence?
That would be fine by me, but I'm not sure if that's what Trustee Duncan was looking for.
Trustee Duncan?
Yeah, I'm not bothered by where it goes. I think it's just as long as that wording is there, so it's clear what we're delegating, then I'd be totally happy with that.
Okay, so can I ask Superintendent to say again what you said?
I think it was delegate the authority to the superintendent and define commensurate accountabilities as per the School Act 22(1). Or it could just be as per the School Act.
Okay. Does that cover off Trustee Duncan?
I don't see a problem with that.
Okay, so we're adding in that section at the end of that line as per the School Act. Okay, any other concerns or questions? Can I just have a show of hands? All those in favor of that change? Okay, perfect. On number 3, I had a suggestion to propose or identify the purpose and criteria for any new policies. So any discussion on adding the word propose or identify? No? Okay, let's have a show of hands. All those who want the original one, show of hands, and then we'll ask about the change. All those who want the original one? Okay, and those who want the change? 2, 3, 4, 5. So the change is accepted. Okay, and we're going down to number 3.6. Number 4, evaluate the superintendent in accordance with policy 2100.1 superintendent evaluation was the proposal from Trustee Whitaker. So we're going to, I'll go to the Secretary Treasurer and the Superintendent. Any issues with taking out that, because it's probably just a preamble to the policy. Is there any issues with taking out that prescriptive long adjective?
I guess my concern is that it is sort of a co-developed process. And once the board has approved its policy, we go with that. So I don't think it hurts to reference it. I think this is the only place we reference an evaluation policy. My only worry would be if we remove some of these descriptors, does it remove any co-development or protection for the superintendent?
Okay, Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, just speaking to the Secretary Treasurer's point, Chair, I think that the policy speaks to what's been agreed, and there's actually, I think, a reference in the policy about the co-development piece, so that the board and the superintendent would, sit down and sort of discuss the evaluation process and how to proceed. So I don't think that the wording that's being proposed removed, so the pre-established bit, really adds anything, and I don't think adds any layer of protection at all. I think what's important is that the policy is cited. So I like the change. I think it just makes it read a little bit cleaner and more straightforwardly.
Okay, so we have a wording change here, so I'm going to go back to the original. Sorry, Trustee Banger.
Yeah, thank you. Just hearing from the Secretary Treasurer on having that in, and I mean, my perspective, whether or not it adds a layer of protection or not, I'm not a legal expert, so I can't comment. I'll trust staff if they think it's necessary that it should be in there. The other thing is we have in other parts of this policy added words, pieces, segments, sentences for context. I think this is important, so I'm going to support keeping the original wording here. I think it's necessary.
Okay, we have a difference of opinion, so we'll go to a vote. All those on keeping the original wording signify. 2, 3. And the wording is original. Okay, original wording. Thank you. We're moving on to number 4 in that section. That was the last one in this section. So it was respect the authority of the superintendent to carry out executive action and support the superintendent's actions, which are exercised within the delegated discretionary powers of the position, and communicate any board direction, including any required changes or improvement. So that one's on the floor. I personally not going to support that. I think that is handled in other parts of the document, but I'd be open, Trustee Painter, to see what everybody else has to say.
Just very quickly, I agree with you. I don't think that necessarily needs to be put in here. I don't think it adds clarity or context to this piece within this policy framework under 3.6. And as you say, I think it's laid out elsewhere. What's trying to be tacked on to the end of this. I think this piece is suitable on its own.
Okay, any other comments on this section? Okay, oh, Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, just briefly, I think the wording does need to be added. I think that while the board is outlining what its responsibilities are, to say nowhere in the document that it also has responsibility just as in terms of just a normal course of business interaction with its superintendent to communicate directions around changes needed or improvements, with the exception of a performance evaluation, I think is highly problematic. The idea that you would only communicate or commit to communicating a need for improvement or changes during a performance evaluation time, I just think is not a functional way to communicate with your CEO. But that's just my view.
Okay, for me, that's included under provide clear board direction, but that's just me. So we'll go back, unless we have any other comments there, we'll go back to the original wording. All those in favor of the wording as is in the document, signify. Okay, and that the original wording is what we're going with. Okay, we are moving on. We are turning the page. We are nothing under that. We are back to 3.8, and the discussion was under number 2, 3.8, to remove pre-established performance appraisal mechanism, but then we're not going to do that because it wasn't, that policy has not been written yet. Is that correct?
Yeah. Okay,
so original wording. So that was not the evaluation policy, that was the board evaluation policy. Okay. Under number 3.9, approve budget process and timelines at the outset or prior to the budget process. The question was whether or not it should be at the outset or prior to. In the way I think we've always been discussing it, it's been prior to. It's been outset. So we're looking at a discussion there. Who wants to jump in there?
Chair, I'm happy to.
Okay, Trustee Painter.
I'm just going to support maintaining the original wording for reasons that I think have been articulated.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay, all those in favor of the original wording, which would be leave it at outset of the board. Okay, and the original wording goes. And the number 2, I will have the superintendent comment. In collaboration with the superintendent, and the suggestion was to add the secretary treasurer to identify budget assumptions and draft priorities. What is your feeling about adding the secretary treasurer in there? Basically, you are our one employee, so I'm not sure if we should add that in there or not. So superintendent.
Yeah, I understand the practicality of it, and I would hope that the secretary treasurer would be involved in all of these conversations, but by including that role in this, I think we move away from the single employee of the board.
Okay, I agree. So any comments about that, about leaving it as is? Okay. So I have nothing else on that page. We're moving to the last page, which was number 13, to come up with some wording for, and any other thing that we might think of along the way. We'll come up with some wording for that between now and then. Under references, we're adding board bylaws and policies regulations, and the school act is already there. And somebody had a suggestion for adding something under 4.0 responsibilities. Was it trustee Duncan or trustee Whitaker?
Yeah,
Trustee Whitaker. Oh, sorry,
So
trustee Duncan.
I think it should say evaluate the effectiveness of the superintendent in achieving established priorities and key results.
And that's not under any place where we're talking about our interactions with the superintendent. And the other section? Evaluate. So we are evaluating the superintendent under 3.6. So what was your wording?
To evaluate the effectiveness of the superintendent in achieving established priorities and key results, which is what we're reviewing every year.
Oh, so you were
That's where I
taking
took
that
that line from.
You were
right?
taking the section out of there and putting it over there. So the floor is open for that discussion.
So do you want my rationale behind that?
Sure.
A year ago, I attended the BCSTA meeting, and there was an entire presentation by Charles Ungulator that clearly stated that that is the only thing that as trustees that we should be looking at. And that is our key job and our key responsibility is ensuring that, because we have one employee, that we are moving towards these priorities, our key results based on data. And that's how we evaluate, that is how we decide if we're doing a good job. And the only person we can really do that with is the superintendent, even though it is really a review of ourselves as well.
Is that not what the board work plan is? That comes forward every month, sections of it that the superintendent brings forward?
No, I don't believe that's true. I believe it is based on data. I mean, if that were true, then we would have been doing different things several years ago when we were looking at the data, right? If that was what was coming forward and we saw the results that we were having.
Okay, superintendent and then secretary treasurer.
Just as I'm looking at the draft policy 2100.1 around the superintendent's evaluation, I do see in the guiding principles about it, it's reasonably related to the goals or roles and responsibilities of the superintendent and the goals of the district strategic plan, as well as the emphasis on the need for and use of evidence for evaluation purposes. So when I'm looking or listening, I'm wondering how these two align and making sure that they do with the superintendent's evaluation and not having a separate entity that doesn't align with this policy.
If I may.
Yep.
Yeah, so for me, it's because the title under here is 4.0 under responsibilities. I think it is putting that exact piece that you're talking about and saying this is a responsibility of the board. In the past, we've had a challenge where we've had to come up with the superintendent's evaluation process, and that was a big deal. But it's because we came up with that policy because that is a responsibility of the board. It is a very big responsibility. We get to pass a budget, hire a superintendent, and hold somebody accountable to reaching those goals that we've all said that we're going to try and achieve for student success. So for me, I just want to see it as a responsibility that the board knows this is your responsibility. Why do we run for election if we aren't going to make sure that we're moving forward towards goals?
Well, personally, I think the strat plan, the FESL, all the data-driven things and the annual work plan that is brought to us at 12-month cycle are what the superintendent is bringing to prove what you're asking for. But I'm only one person sitting around this board. So if anybody else wants to, trustee Painter, and then, oh, sorry, I had the secretary treasurer first and then trustee Painter.
Yeah, I don't want to enter debate, but I think the 4.0 section part is just to say, this is part of our template. It's not an add-in to this policy. It's, I think it's part of the board's new template. And it's about who is responsible for carrying out this policy and the contents of it, not to set out actual responsibility. So if what Trustee Whitaker is wanting is not covered in 3.0, or sorry, I think it's 3.2, develop and maintain a culture of student learning. We talk about a lot of results there. And then we talk about the board or the superintendent evaluation. And then I think the intent is at some point to have a board evaluation. So I think it would be covered off elsewhere in the policy, but I don't think it belongs under section 4.0 because this is simply part of our template and reflects in the policy above who is responsible for what.
Trustee Painter?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the attempt to add something here, but I really do think that we cover it in the 3 or 4 other times in this policy that we talk about evaluations. And I'm just aligning my thoughts as well, because I was going to say similar to what the Secretary Treasurer said, that this really is outlining the responsibilities of the board in terms of School Act and all the policies of the board. That includes everything that we are responsible for overseeing and our compliance on obligations with the School Act. So I think this alone says everything that we need it to say, and that adding anything else is, again, I've used this word already, is redundant given everything that comes before it. So I'm going to support the original wording here.
Okay. So that concludes that policy. What I would like to recommend, sorry, Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to point out that in the chat is the ministerial order M276-/007 on codes of conduct, and also the School Act section 8.3 around school plans, because we do have a few items. Well, we have to decide, I guess, whether there is an exhaustive list under other responsibilities or whether we don't intend it to be an exhaustive list. But if we do want it to be an exhaustive list, then I think we need to take another pass at the other responsibilities that boards have and include those. So it's there for your information.
So we were going to come up with some wording for and any other thing we could think of for number 13. Okay, so that was the commitment I said that we would bring forward for the next go round. What I'd like to propose is a 5-minute recess and then come back and then go to role of the chair and vice chair. And so we'll see you in 5 minutes at 9:15. Okay, I'm starting to call you all back now. I appreciate everybody's patience. This is hard slogging, so. But it's important stuff to get through.
You're doing a great job, Chair.
Thanks. My glasses are up, my glasses are down. Okay, we just got Jordan and Angie left to come. 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, hail, the gang's all here. Okay, we're working on role of chair and vice chair, and this will be the first time that this has come to ops. So section number 1, rationale. Any concerns, issues, questions? Trustee Whitaker.
Okay, so the first statement, it says the chairperson provides leadership and is primarily responsible for safeguarding the integrity of the board's governance processes. I actually think, you know, like that's everybody's job. So for me, I don't think yes, it is one of the responsibilities, but I guess my challenge when I see that written that way, that's everybody on the board's job, not just the chair. So I just wanted to make that comment. I feel better with the chairperson is the board spokesperson and represents the board in the community as being the only rationale there, because somehow I want that statement to, maybe that should be dumped into the board role one, because it is everybody's responsibility, not just the board chair.
Okay, other folks, what do you think about that? I disagree with you personally, but Trustee Painter.
I disagree as well, but I appreciate and would agree that it is the responsibility of all board members to ensure that we are in compliance with our governance processes, but the chair has a special responsibility to do that. So if we want to, at the board meeting, now that we've moved on, say, throw something into the other piece, go ahead. But I think this needs to stay as is. I think this is a very good description of this rationale.
Trustee Waters.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't disagree with Trustee Whitaker's point here. It's just that this is a policy around the role of the chair. So that's what the focus is on.
That's not the whole board right now.
That's right, but that doesn't, like, just because something is in the role of the chair and vice chair policy doesn't preclude it from also being a part of the role of the trustee. Because I agree that it is a shared responsibility, but it is a primary responsibility of the chair in their position of leadership. So I think, you know, we have to look at the policy at hand and what it's trying to accomplish, and obviously it's going to be connected to other policies as well.
Yeah. Any other comments on that? Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, no, I agree with Trustee Whitaker's point. I think what would make this a little bit more clear from my perspective is just articulating that the chair is a presiding officer. And so as a presiding officer, they preside over board meetings and they work with the superintendent and the secretary treasurer and with their board colleagues who might be bringing forward an item for inclusion on the agenda. I think that to me, in addition to being a spokesperson out in the community on behalf of the board, would, I think, address it nicely. I think what we, in my view, want to stay away from is elevating the position of board chair in a way that is not in line with their power. So my observation is that we have to be very careful that it's always 100% clear that the chair has delegated authority in certain areas, delegated authority from the board. They have no additional or extra power as chair, and their primary role is that of a presiding officer and as the spokesperson on behalf of the board in the community. And then I think we can kind of fill in some of the other responsibilities of the chair, whether it be sitting on other committees with or without voting rights, whether it be assigning.
I think you're getting ahead of us, though.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a little bit of context for my overall thoughts on the policy. But if we're speaking to the first point, I think we want to stick to, well, what are the responsibilities of the chair, and be careful that none of the wording suggests that the chair has power that a chair does not have.
Trustee Painter and then Ferris.
Thanks. None of the wording in this rationale suggests the chair has power that the chair doesn't have. So I'm just saying that very, very clearly. And to the point around the presiding officer, I mean, I appreciate that comment, but chair and presiding officer are synonymous. So I think we use chairperson, that means presiding officer, and we use that all the way through our policies. So I feel like that's what we should use and be consistent, so we don't start jumping to similar words and just expanding what we have here for the purpose of adding more language that means the same thing.
Trustee Ferris.
Sure, I want to just add to Trustee Painter's comments here. I mean, what the wording says is primarily. It doesn't say solely. It says primarily, and I think all of our experience is that when a chairperson makes a ruling with regard to governance processes, if there are members of the board who disagree, the board can vote and change that decision. But the chair is primarily responsible for governance. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll come back to this one as we go through it. We're under policy 2.1 meetings 1 through 5. Any comments, questions, concerns? It's fairly straightforward, this one. Okay, we'll move on to next section, 2.2 agenda. 1, 2, and 3. Any comments, concerns, questions? Trustee Whitaker?
Yeah, so on number 3, I'm just wondering why, well, it's under agenda, but it says ensure that each trustee has a full and fair opportunity to be heard. So that sort of feels more like meetings. And I don't know how you would, anyway, for me, I want it to say ensure that each trustee has a full, fair opportunity to ask questions and to be heard.
Okay, so present to vote on budget items, ask questions and be heard. Two. Okay, any other questions, concerns, or issues under 1, 2, or 3? Okay, we're going to go to section 2.3, chairperson superintendent, number 1 through 4. Questions, concerns, Trustee Whitaker?
Under number 4, I think you should strike facilitate or and just start with arrange, because arranging the facilitation may be that individual, but may not. And the same with and take responsibility for compiling and reporting the superintendent evaluation. I guess that can stay, but I think you should strike the first piece.
Sorry, Chair, just point of privilege.
Yep.
I got lost in Trustee Whitaker's last piece. Can she just clarify what she wants to change here?
Okay, so I think you need to strike facilitate or and start with arrange. And as I look at this more, and it should then go to after superintendent evaluation and take responsibility for reporting the superintendent evaluation. I would strike and compiling.
So take responsibility for reporting the superintendent evaluation.
Yeah.
Does the superintendent or the secretary treasurer know if that's in keeping with the policy 2100? Do you know offhand?
Yeah, the 2100 speaks to the external consultant will gather all information, analyze and prepare a written evaluation report to be presented. So it doesn't speak to the board chair doing that.
Okay. Okay. But you're just taking out facilitate or and compiling. Okay. Any
and
other?
then compiling, because that's not
Yep.
in there, right?
2.3, number 1 through 4, any other questions, concerns, or issues? Trustee Duncan, did you have your hand up?
My comment was just back to making sure that this particular item, this point, aligns with 2100. So, and if I recall correctly, 2100 does not assign any responsibility to the board chair for either reporting out or collecting information to do with the evaluation. My understanding was that that's a combination of both the consultant that the board decides to hire to assist it with that, and the committee that the board would put together in order to facilitate that work. But so I think we need to just clarify that before we continue.
But if I can just elaborate, arranging for the facilitation of the superintendent evaluation in accordance means that the chairperson is assembling or asking for trustees to volunteer for the committee. So there is that piece in there too. So the chairperson does have a role there at the beginning of the process, even if you don't think that they have a further evaluation requirements going through. But we will
Chair, we're just talking about compiling and reporting, right? The second part, is that right? I think that's what we're talking about. I believe.
But you're arranging for the facilitation of the superintendent evaluation, which means you have to have convened a committee in order to then talk about who's going to do the evaluation. So there is a component where the board chair is involved there at the beginning to at least assign trustees to the committee.
That wasn't taken away. That's why I think I'm confused.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm explaining to Trustee Duncan, that there is still a mechanism in here. She's saying the board chair doesn't have anything to do with this, and I'm saying they still do.
No, I was just referring to the second part of that paragraph, Chair.
Okay.
Because that's the part we were talking about.
Okay, we'll come back to that one. Obviously, there's some clarification needed. So we will come back to that one. 1 through 3, if that's section 2.3, anything under 1, 2, or 3? Trustee Whitaker?
Wait, are we on 2.4 corporate relations, or am I jumping?
Not yet. 2.3, 1, 2, or 3. Okay, we're moving to 2.4 corporate responsibilities, 1 through 5. Trustee Whitaker, did you have your hand up for that one?
Yeah, under 1, I appreciate where it says, under number, it says corporate decisions to the board. I would strike the corporate. Really, all decisions come to the board. The only decisions that the board chair can make without is the appointment of committees that aren't assigned by policy. So I think we should strike the corporate out.
Maybe Secretary Treasurer could tell us if that would be the case, that there's no issue that would ever require the chair to fulfill number 1.
By virtue of the board's makeup, it is a corporation, and so I think the word may be redundant in this sentence, so I think it could be removed.
Okay.
By virtue of being a board, you are a registered corporation, so and you act as one. So whether it's there or not, I think the meaning's the same.
Okay, so we could strike number 1. Okay, we'll come back to that one.
I wouldn't strike number 1, I would strike corporate.
Oh, corporate, okay. Okay. 2 through 5, any questions? Oh, Trustee Whitaker?
I'm on 5.
Yep.
So I would add to the end of that, unless otherwise determined by policy.
Like what? Can you give me an example?
Yeah, because we were talking about committees at just a recent meeting where we were trying to ensure that the board chair wasn't appointing that. So I don't remember if we passed that or not, but if there is a policy where the board chair is not, like if it's an elected position to those committees, I don't know if we're going to have them, but if it is predetermined by another policy, then the board chair would not be appointing to that committee.
So currently, I don't think we have anything on the books that is otherwise than the chair appointing. Trustee Painter.
Yeah, I actually recall the conversation Trustee Whitaker was talking about. Nothing was passed in the discussion that I think, and certainly the point that I made was that consistent with our current policies and practices is that the chair appoints members to all board committees, and that has not changed. There is no policy that we have that I believe does not align with this. So I do think that putting that in is it would not be following with the current practices of the board. If the future board wants to move in that direction, they can certainly come back to this policy and update it. But as it stands right now, this is how this board operates.
And this complies with all other policies that we have currently. Okay. Any other comments or questions on 1 through 5? Okay, board integrity 2.5. And that is number 1 and number 2. Comments, questions, concerns? Okay, hearing none. I'm turning my page. 2.6, duties of the vice chair. Number 1 and 2. Nothing there from anybody? Sorry?
No.
Is that you, Trustee Whitaker? No, we're
Oh,
good.
sorry, I had to get the laptop open. I'm good till 2.7.
Okay, we're on 2.7 then. Leadership, board chair and vice chair. Trustee Whitaker.
Okay, so under 1, trustees or treat all trustees equally, ensure that each trustee has equal access to information. Can we please get to equity here? So we want to treat all trustees equitably and ensure that each trustee has equal access to information. But I do think that we need to be treating our new trustees a little bit differently than our old trustees. Of course, everybody is treated fairly, but I think that there is need to spend a little bit more time and a little bit more effort with a new trustee. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I think that we're looking for equity, not equality all of the time.
Okay, any questions, Secretary Treasurer, with the wording, changing that one word? Does that change the intent at all for you?
Not that I know of.
Okay. 2 on the 2.72, anything, any issues there for anybody? Okay, references, we only got 1 reference there, so we're going to go back to the beginning now. Role of the chair and the vice chair at the top. So we had a question of controversy over the language. So I'm going to go back to the original language and ask for a vote. All those people who want, trustees who want the original wording, signify with their hands, please. And the original wording is going forward. There was nothing else on that page. I'm turning over the page. 33, 32. At the top of the page, 2.2 agenda. The question was, ensure that each trustee has a full and fair opportunity to ask full and fair opportunity to ask questions and to be heard. I'm not sure how it was going to be worded, but I think that was Trustee Whitaker. Was that your suggestion?
Yeah, I just wanted you to insert and ask questions and to be heard. Well, and
so this is in the agenda portion, right?
Well, apparently that's where it comes up, but there needs to be an opportunity for trustees to ask questions and to be answered and to make their comments.
Okay. I think that's practice. So I'm not sure I've got the wording correctly. Ensure that trustees has a full and fair opportunity to ask questions and to be heard. And to be heard. Okay.
I believe that's right, Chair. Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor of the original wording? All those with the new wording? Okay, and the new wording is going forward. New wording. Number 5. So the suggestion from Trustee Whitaker was to take out facilitate or at the beginning of the sentence and take out the word compiling and at the last part of the sentence. So comments, questions, issues?
Chair, if I may.
Trustee Painter.
Thank you. I appreciate the discussion that we had around this. I'm quite comfortable with this language. I think what it does is it allows the chair in the role as the person who will be responsible for facilitating and supporting the board in doing this work. I think we need to be sure that the language in our policy affords them the capacity to do so. And if we start restricting that, to me, it becomes fraught. So I think the language here is sufficiently focused enough to allow the chair the capacity to do the evaluation facilitation work on behalf of the board. And if the board requires additional information or wants to add pieces, the board always can. I think this is a policy. It needs to stay high level. I am always concerned about being overly restrictive in policy before things are enacted. Although it is important to be clear, let's not be restrictive. So I'm going to support the original wording.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Trustee Whitaker?
Actually, I think Trustee Duncan was ahead of me. Sorry.
Sorry, Trustee Duncan?
Yeah, I just wondered if, Chair, if you could read the amended version for us.
The amended version was arrange for the facilitation of the superintendent evaluation in accordance with policy 2100.1 superintendent evaluation and take responsibility for reporting the superintendent evaluation.
Okay, so yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so yeah, I think that we need to get rid of the second part. So for me, the facilitation that the chair provides is setting up the meeting, right, for the board to carry out the process of, for instance, identifying a suitable consultant to work with, et cetera, et cetera. In terms of the reporting out or the collection of information, I believe that the policy 2100 is quite clear about who does that. And I believe it's a combination of both the committee of trustees that does the work and the consultant who ultimately brings everything together and reports back to the board. So my understanding is that for this purposes of this policy, really, and the role of the chair, they are a facilitator and in the way that they would set an agenda, bring the board together in order to execute the work of the board around the performance evaluation.
Okay, so we're going to call the question. All those.
No. Sorry.
What?
Well, I didn't speak. I just let Trustee Duncan go first.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. My apologies. Trustee Whitaker.
So for me, and I believe that the superintendent actually went to the policy and read it out, that the policy does not have the chair compiling the report, but they should be responsible for bringing the report. And that's why I've suggested for striking the for compiling, because that is over and above what the policy 2100 says. And my reason for striking the facilitate or is because arranging for the facilitation could be facilitating it or having somebody else to. So it's just redundant words. But I think it's important to make this change specifically because the policy that we're trying to align with does not have the chair compiling this data. And I wouldn't approve of the chair compiling that data. It's really important that it is that third party.
I'm going to go to the Secretary Treasurer and see if, in your recollection of the superintendent's policy or the superintendent, if there's any words in here that don't, that are in opposition to the superintendent's evaluation policy.
I think that the superintendent read out the policy itself, and it does speak to the third party, if that's correct, Deb. And so to me, if you want to be in alignment with 2100.1, there's no harm in removing compiling.
Okay.
Yeah, in my opinion.
But leaving the first part, is that what you're?
I think facilitate or arrange doesn't, I mean, if you want to remove facilitate, I don't think it changes it a whole lot. And I think if you want to remove compile, then you're still in alignment with 2100.1.
Okay. Okay, so we have the wording here that we're going to vote on. So the original wording or the amended version. So we'll vote on the original wording first. All those in favor of the original wording? So we have
Wait a bit
4
longer.
there.
Get a couple more.
Sorry, so the original wording is passed. Original, okay. And now we're on number 2.41, corporate responsibilities. And the suggestion was to take the word corporate out of that line, bring all matters requiring a decision to the board. Comments, questions, Nicole, or sorry, Trustee Duncan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, I think my screen may have frozen. I didn't get the outcome of the last vote.
There was 4 trustees in favor, so we move forward.
In favor of keeping the wording
of the original wording, yeah.
Even though it doesn't align with 2100.
Point of order. The vote has happened. We can't have debate on a motion if the vote has already happened.
If my colleague would allow me to finish, I wanted to clarify what the vote was and that what the basis of the decision was, because I think my screen froze. I didn't see anyone's hands go up except for yours, Chair.
I counted 4. All those that voted in favor, because I don't know if Kelly grasped it, but I knew I counted 4. It was Ryan, myself, Angie, and Tom, I believe, were the 4 that put their hands up.
Thank you.
So we're on 2.4, number 1. Bring all matters requiring a decision to the board. So the suggestion from Trustee Whitaker was to take out the word corporate. And the Secretary Treasurer said that that would be fine because we are a corporate entity and that would be implied. So any discussions, questions, concerns? So all those in favor of the original wording? All those in favor of taking out the word corporate? And the word corporate's out. We are on the last page. We are on number 2.71. Treat all trustees equitably and ensure that each trustee has equal access to information. I think that is just a given, that they're interchangeable. So we're just going to go with equitably. I think it is a better word. Unless there's any concerns there. Okay, so we're at the end of that. Good work, everybody. I'm really impressed. That was hard slogging. If I can find the rest of my agenda here. Thank you very much, everybody. That was hard. But it's hard to get through those policies sometimes. I've lost my agenda. So we have no public disclosure of in-camera items. We have no new business. We have no notices of motion that I'm aware of. No. Could I have a motion to adjourn? Trustee Painter, all those in favor? Thanks for everything. Good night, everybody, and have a
Thanks, everyone.